get 1% better a day, commit to the input. There's input goals, right?
Hmm.
Hey, if I walk 30 minutes a day, then I'll be the healthy I want to be. I actually think there's kind of a bridge. I like reverse engineering.
Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode, as well as free training on creativity, over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to welcome onto the show Robert Glazer. Robert is the founder and CEO of Acceleration Partners and the author of Elevate, Push Beyond Your Limits and Unlock Success in Yourself and Others. The book explains how to grow capacity as both an individual and a leader through the four elements of capacity building: spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional. Since instilling these ideas into Acceleration Partners, this company has been recognized in Glassdoor's Employees' Choice Awards, Entrepreneur's Top Company Culture, Inc. Magazine's Best Places to Work, and Fortune's Best Small and Medium Workplaces. It's my great pleasure to have Robert join us today. So welcome, Robert.
Thanks, James. Excited to be here.
So share with us all what's happening in your world just now.
Just launched a book, getting ready for our big annual company event and the normal sort of chaos of October conference season. So it's been a lot of travel. I'm looking forward to headed into Thanksgiving and having a little quiet time.
So before we kind of get into some of the concepts and ideas in the book, take us back. I mean, how did you get into the work that you do today? Where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, in terms of the work of the book, it really all started with this note I started sending on Fridays to my team. That I think originally I tried some different names. It was called Friday Inspiration. I just decided I'd write something. We were growing as a company. I was focused on kind of improving myself in better mornings, and it wouldn't be about the business. It would be a story or something that was kind of motivational and inspirational. And I started writing these for about 5 or 6 weeks. I didn't think anyone was even reading them, but I was enjoying writing them. So I kept going with it. And then slowly I began to get note backs from people saying, I'm really enjoying this. I appreciate these. I did this thing you talked about 2 weeks ago. I sent it to my brother. He loves it. I shared it with someone at another company. I happened to be at a conference a few months later with a bunch of other CEOs, and we were just talking about best practices. And I shared that, there's actually this kind of exercise of writing this note to my team. I had gotten great feedback, and a few of them said, "All right, well, let us. I'd love to see what it is. Forward yours to us." And like most entrepreneurs, one decided he'd do his own and did to the other days. And the other three, said, "Oh, I'll forward yours to my team. This is perfect." And it just started making its way around companies. And that's when I decided I'd try to actually open it up, because it was literally just an email that was being forwarded so that people could sign up for it and create a template of some of the old ones. And there was an article on Inc. that someone wrote about it. That was the only email they read, and saw 2,000 people sign up in a couple of days. And it really just started to spiral from there.
And today, I think, was over 100,000 subscribers to this
Yeah, over
weekly
100,000
email.
people read it. The email is one form of distribution. It's also on LinkedIn. It also gets puts in intranets and all kinds of other stuff. So it sort of it goes out, and then it permeates itself in a few different directions.
And Acceleration Partners themselves, tell me a little bit about this business. What does it do? And when you were kind of starting up, because you're kind of known about creating obviously great culture within an organization, did the business start just from an entrepreneurial idea and then really think about the culture came later? Or did you start the business and you kind of knew pretty much from day one that you wanted it to be maybe a more purpose-driven type of business?
Both. So the business started just out of an entrepreneurial need. I sort of grew it, hit that million in sales, but I was still in charge of everything, kind of every department. And I think I had one of these choices where I was pretty burnt out. Do I want to stay here? Do I want to build a business? My hesitation in building a business was I didn't think I'd like all the stuff that came along with it, and the HR and the politics. And I sort of made a very intentional decision that if we were going to build this business, I was going to try to break the rules on all the things that drove me nuts and frustrated me about businesses. I wasn't necessarily a big believer in culture at the time, because what I knew or thought of culture was what I saw on walls at companies that sort of
Well, those
came,
horrible posters.
yeah, the Dilbert
Persistence,
office space. Yeah,
striving.
I believe in integrity, and I really like, but if you join any of these CEO groups, or you have access to these companies that have been going for 10 or 15 years, great companies, I started to actually see a very similar playbook and realize there was a very different definition of culture, and that was really having core values that you operated the business upon. So we've set out to do a bunch of things differently, non-traditionally, unapologetically. I kind of just decided I actually wanted to build a business that, as it grew, I would want to work in it. So that was the motivation.
So as the business is gradually kind of developed, and as your experience as a CEO is kind of gradually developed, was there a key inflection point in the business, or your maturity as a leader?
Yeah, there was a couple. I think that million kind of burnout phase was one. I think a few years later, getting to sort of 5 million and having to develop as a leader for the first time. I think there are phases of leadership development, and it's very logical, right? So as a leader, you move from being a doer to a leader. You move into a manager or leadership role, and you look around, you say, what's James doing? What's Sarah doing? And you sort of compile a bunch of these best practices. But as I say, this is sort of a very it's sort of a patchwork quilt of leadership style. And I think eventually you really need to, but you have to go through this because that's your first experience. So you try some stuff on, you're like, oh, let me try being authoritarian, or let me try being supportive, because I see different success models. And then eventually, I think if you really want to be a great leader, you need to develop, an authentic sense of leadership. And I went to a pretty intensive leadership retreat as part of an organization that I'm involved with for 4 or 5 days. Really came out of that understanding sort of purpose and core value, figuring that out for myself. And then that would sort of dictate the type of company that we were going to build. And that was another big inflection point of just unapologetically. I went back, I wrote a 3-year plan. We narrowed down our core values. And I just said, look, this is who I am. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to be. If this excites you, love to have you on the journey. If it doesn't, probably time to exit left. And my style really changed. I stopped trying to emulate best practices, and I just kind of connected to what I really believed in, and not want to say stopped caring, but I think if you really believe in something or have values, you will attract people and you will deflect people. Yeah. And I think you just can't worry about the people that you deflect.
Is that expression, your vibe attracts your tribe. They're either deflected or attracted to you. And then kind of fast forwarding.
You can't make everyone happy. It's one of the things I keep stressing with everyone now. They'll take one person who's really, and then 99 other people who are fine. Like, we just can't overreact to the one person who's unhappy about something. If 12 people are unhappy about it, then maybe that's a sign.
So fast forwarding with this book, first of all, what was the impetus for the book? Because you're a busy CEO, you're building this business. Book takes a lot of heart, a lot of work, a lot of time.
Writing the books, frankly, is easier than launching and marketing the book.
But why put yourself through this pain to write this and get this book out to the world? What was it that was driving you to do this?
Yeah, I went to write a compilation, actually, because Friday Forward really took off. I thought I had a lot of these great stories. It's like the early artist, the hits that no one had seen because no one knew about it then. And I knew the writing was connecting with a lot of people. And I talked to a bunch of agents, and they all said, no one likes compilations. And then finally I talked to an agent, no one likes compilations, but I really like the writing. I think you have something here. Like, what's the story? What's the book behind it? And that led me sort of to a 2-year process of rewriting and realizing that eventually that what I had been doing to improve my life, what we had been doing as a leadership strategy at our business to grow capacity in our employees and have them grow with the business, and the impact that Friday Forward was making on all of these people that I didn't know, were actually all the same concept and all the same principles. And that's sort of what illuminated the whole notion of capacity building and those and those elements, and realizing it was kind of all the same thing. And it was an accessible framework for people to, connect with other people, to lead and build their organizations, and to really elevate themselves.
So this concept of capacity building is a core part of the book. The book is kind of based around developing capacity in people and teams. What is that this idea of capacity building? What does it mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the process of how we get better and understanding that, right, we have that capacity. I think there's 4 elements: spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional. I think we all understand physical. Like, we understand that there's this 10-pound weight I have on the floor and I can lift it like 3 times. But if I do the work and I lift it, a couple times a day, each day for 90 days, I can then probably do 20 reps. Like, I've built my capacity. I think in these other areas, we tend to chalk things up to we have it or we don't have it, not that this is something I can actually work on and develop and improve my ability. But everything I have seen from high achievers says that that's what they do. And these are the 4 areas that they focus on because they're highly interconnected. And if you're really dragging on one, I think it sets you off course. So, intellectual, like, I think of that as your operating system and how you get better and plan and execute with discipline, all these things. Like, if you believe you have a fixed mindset and you came with a certain amount of intelligence in the box and what you can do, I mean, that's really going to limit you versus someone who says, look, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at difficult conversations, or I'm not good at, tough employee. Like, how do I actually get better at this and make it easier? So one of the misconceptions about capacity building, it's not about doing more, and even intellectual capacity is not about doing more. It's about doing more of the right things. And I think you actually use less energy and get more accomplished when you have everything kind of focused in rowing in the same direction.
So before we get into some of the other areas of capacity, the kind of intellectual and maybe even the emotional,
Yeah.
That I remember when I sit and kind of go through my annual goals, and I'm sitting looking there, and it's like, the physical side, I know what I need to do there, and the business side, I know what I need to do there, and the other things I want to do, kind of experiences, and then there's this thing that the kind of spiritual side, and I think, how do you set goals? How do you build? Like, what does that look like? What does building capacity mean when it comes to having a spiritual life and be a fully rounded person?
Sure. I think it has to be the starting point for everything. So spiritual capacity for me is who you are, what you want most, what are your core values, what are your strengths. So really you would want to align goals around what you want most, right? I think I was a great goal setter years ago. I'd set all these arbitrary 1-year goals and I'd get them done and awesome. And I'd set like other arbitrary goals. For me now, my long-term goals serve the purpose of my core values, and my short and medium goals are down payments on my long-term goals. So it's all connected. I think if we're not clear about what we want and why we want it, we're actually liable to fall into the sort of societal trap of success and go really hard after something that actually doesn't provide us any true, deep, intrinsic satisfaction or motivation.
So how do you, when you've really thought deeply about your values, what is the purpose, those side of things, how do you ensure that you keep this top of mind while you're making these decisions, when maybe the flow, the ebb and flow of building a business, doing the other kind of things is like just kind of often kind of pulling you in a certain type of direction? How do you ensure that you remain focused on what's the main thing, what's important?
Yeah, I think I put them on your desk, articulate them, share with your team. I think we all know our core values. The difference is, the analogy I like to use is like, imagine driving a car in a dark tunnel and there's painted lines, and those are your core values, right? If you have a light, you know how to stay in the lines. If not, you're going to hit a wall and you're going to be like, I hit the wall, and you're going to hit another wall and you're going to hit the wall. Your car's going to be pretty smashed. I think this is the same thing for our decision process. Most of us know our core values intuitively. We just can't actually articulate them, but we know when we're doing something that feels super energetic and we stay up all night, or we're doing and you feel like in your zone, when you're like, oh, whatever I'm doing here, or this person just is dragging me down. When you have them in front of you on a piece of paper, when you have them written, when you have them articulated, when you share, you much better decision making. Oh, I'm not gonna take this job because it really doesn't intersect with my core values. I'm gonna actually I'm going to move away from the relationship with that person, because I now realize that that person is really directly kind of antithesis of several of my core values, or sort of brings me down in those areas. I just like a company, when you see companies with really strong values, they don't have a lot of rules. I interviewed one of the best CEOs in the world recently, Gary Ridge of WD-40, and he said that anyone these are the difference between real core values and fake core values. Anyone in their organization who makes a decision in service of one or more of their core values is safe. Like you're safe if you make those decisions. So they don't need a rule book. They say, hey, here are your guiding principles. Similarly with kids, like, do you want to give them 1,000 rules, or do you want to say, here are our guiding principles, and we expect, and hope that you kind of live within these principles? It's really the same thing for ourselves. I think we know how to do this more for other people than we know how to do it for ourselves.
That reminds me a little bit of you mentioned Dilbert, the character.
Yeah.
And was it Scott? I'm trying to remember the name of the artist.
Scott Adams.
Scott Adams. That's right. He
Yeah.
wrote a great book about how to succeed at goals without goal setting, or something. It was something along those lines. And he spoke about being process orientated as opposed to outcome orientated, I guess. And it's quite a different way of thinking when you're thinking, like you're talking about capacity and the physical side. Like, example, if you're wanting to increase your flexibility, let's say, you just say, okay, process driven is every day I'm going to do yoga for 15 minutes. Not that I'm going to try and be able to do some ridiculous kind of flexible, but every day you just consistently kind of move towards that.
Get 1% better a day, commit to the input. There's input goals, right? Hey, if I walk 30 minutes a day, then I'll be the healthy I want to be. I actually think there's kind of a bridge. I like reverse engineering. One of the tips that I share in the book is to encourage anyone to pay the $50 and just sign up for some activity, whether it's a Spartan race, an Olympic triathlon, whatever it is. It is so much more value than a gym membership. So if you want to be healthy, you say, look, that race is in 3 months, but because I know when I made a commitment to that thing in 3 months, I'm now actually going to follow the training regimen. And to your point, the training regimen for 90 days is what makes you a lot more healthy than the race itself. So the race should be the outcome, but every time I've paid for an event or put down the deposit, I end up like getting much more exercise as I lead up to the training and whatever it is the event is itself.
That's kind of interesting about kind of putting that down. I noticed that one of the things you did in this book is, I think you said, like, profits are going to something called Build, which I hadn't heard about before. So I'm not sure if this is a North American organization. Can you tell me a little bit like what that organization is and why you felt compelled really to give to this organization?
I think so. Build is an incredible organization that adds an entrepreneurial curriculum to inner city schools where you'd normally have maybe a graduation rate of 60%. And it teaches kids entrepreneurial skills. It has them get involved with creating a business, identifying as the leaders of those business, the CEO, the CFO, the head of marketing, kind of presenting and pitching it, and then staying with that business over 4 years. And what happens is the students get a tremendous context for their education, right? Now you understand maybe, math and numbers or writing and marketing, and they learn public speaking and they learn creativity and thinking and all of this stuff. And there's just an amazing track record of taking kids in the same school. And if they stay with this program for 4 years, they graduated over 90%. And then they go on to really I think there are a lot of kids sitting in school these days just not understanding how it's going to apply or what the context is. But Build in itself is really an example of capacity building, right? It's taking the same set of students, giving them higher expectations, upping their skills, and seeing a better outcome.
Great, fantastic cause. I love that. That linkage you were saying, that some of the kids at school, they're like, well, I don't quite understand how this is linking to this thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't bear any relationship to what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm studying geometry, but I need some money, right? I mean, put food on the table. Yeah.
So as you've been going along your journey as a CEO and also as an author as well now, was there a key light bulb moment, a key aha moment in your life and in your work where you went, oh, okay, you made an important distinction, or you maybe changed direction, or you got clarity on something in relation to what you wanted to do with your life and your work?
Yeah, I think it was a process. There were a couple, as I mentioned, the core value one was key for me. It just, it was why when I started writing these Friday forward emails and they were taking time, and people were like, why are you doing this? It's not related to your business. It doesn't make money. But I looked at that checklist. I'm like, but it meets all of these things. I think too, as I went through the process and even the book, I sort of realized a bunch of things was, oh, I'm writing the book that I needed. I think a lot of us when I was younger, and that I wish I had had. So I've come to realize, yeah, my purpose is very driven for me from I think my childhood and sort of my path, and realizing that I probably underachieved for a while because I didn't fall into these paint by number sort of careers, and no one was really saying, oh, let's help you figure out what you're good at and lean into your strengths and the things that typically we do more with adults. So that became for me where I'm really all in on the capacity building, both within my organization and outside of it, and think that unlike all this stuff going around the world, the negativity, we're just knocking each other down and tearing, we're not even tearing down ideas anymore. We're just tearing down the people behind the ideas. I think there's a lot more that we can accomplish by, helping people lift people up. And I've seen this, this small suggestion, this small tip, this small idea each week that goes out in this little email has caused people to make changes in their lives and do things that improve it. It could easily be, me going onto there, which a lot of people do on my article, spending all day on their LinkedIn, like trashing their ideas. The amount of energy that people spend, particularly kind of habitual commenters online, who use all their day just commenting on other people's articles and ideas and complaining about them is just amazing to me. I mean, that is not a great way to lift your capacity.
Yeah, I always think whenever I walk around, I was in Barcelona recently, and you walk around, you see like Picasso, or statues of different people. I thought, no one has ever erected a statue for a critic.
Yeah.
So it's always people that build something that have had stuff and chunks knocked out of them over the years as well. You mentioned,
yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example of this. I had someone this week who posted like just terrible review of the book on something, and so I just said, oh, it was just very generic. And so I reached out and I said, I'm online. I'm really sorry that the book didn't provide value for you. Send me a receipt and I'll refund your money. And they wrote back a nice note and they said, oh, I didn't buy it. Actually, my employer sort of gave it out to everyone. Oh. And so now I'm actually thinking they didn't read it based on the response, but I think some people I know, just books that have any sort of inkling of how to improve, I think they're emotionally resistant towards it. But I just think about, so you went online and you sort of, first of all, if you didn't like it in the beginning, and you didn't even buy it, and you decided to write a negative review, I think that's a choice about how you want to spend your time.
So going back to you mentioning about values, how do you deal with, let's say, your values, but when one value is conflicting with another, do you have some sense of hierarchy of your values, or how do you kind of, I think in America, you're coming up for Thanksgiving, you have like the NFL, they kind of battle things out. Do you have to have your values battle out with each other? Or how do you come to peace with a decision when you've got two competing values?
Yeah, I do think for a lot of people, it's helpful to have them hierarchical. And I think something probably matters them more. I don't know that there's a right decision on these things, but I think there's just an awareness sometimes. I was working with someone on my team, and now I'm forgetting what they were, but I remember pointing out to her that she had two like really conflicting, values. Because one was like to support people and the other was to challenge them, or something like that. I don't know what it was. And when I was asking her about how she deals with these situations, particularly my family, she's like, yeah, it's really tough. I was like, yeah, they're almost like diametrically opposed. So we talked through it, and I did think there was a hierarchical in that, like, one was kind of in the support of the other, right? You, in that case, from that example, maybe you do challenge someone, but the real goal was to support them by challenging them. Some people just enjoy the challenge. It's not about the support. But we actually were able to talk through that, and I think in that, but but until then, she never realized it. And I was like, I remember when because we work on these with our teams, and I was doing the session with her, and she was like, "Here are mine." And I was like, "Those two are really interesting. They're like,
Yeah.
they're like yin and yang," and it highlighted some challenges that she was having.
And it might have it kind of showed up those kind of repetitive things that she was doing in her life, where
Yeah,
there was this constant kind of battle of these forces, these values. As we start to finish up here, I'd love to get some quick kind of final questions for you.
sure.
We're talking about values, about capacity building. Are there any apps or tools that you find particularly useful for maybe tracking how you're building your capacity, or focusing, or keeping that focus there, or ensuring that you have your kind of life in some semblance of an order?
Yeah, I built one because I didn't like a lot of the ones. So I built one called the Whole Life Dashboard, which is, you can Google it or even find it on my site, robertglazer.com. Business people kind of code in Excel. And so for me, it was an Excel template that connected all these things. Like, what are your core values? What do you want? What are your goals? And lining all this stuff up in a weekly and daily dashboard, so that you can just reconnect a few minutes every day. As you're looking to your to-do list and you quickly look back over your values, you go, we struggle with urgent and important, most of us. So you can look, that's important, that's urgent, but it's not really important. Or I said I needed to do this, but I keep putting it off. But now I'm looking and I'm like, doesn't really serve any of my values, but it keeps realigning you. What we tend to do in goal setting is we tend to choose the small things that we get quick wins on, and that big goal that like sits there as a mountain, we're like, oh, that's a big goal. Well, this person's sort of doing all these random things, the other person is walking 3 steps, and then 60 days later you look down and you're halfway down the mountain. So to me, this is a really important exercise of redirecting energy every day, right? 30 to 60 minutes towards those priorities that you said were important over 90 days really adds up, really gets you moving in a consistent direction, and getting those big things done, not filling your time checking off all those little things.
So like a ship where you're continually being blown a little bit off course, and so you're continually have these small, small adjustments to kind of keep on where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, so that's one tool that I use. I really like using podcasts these days to sort of learn on the run, and if I want to dive into a topic and go get exercise at the same time. You typically shouldn't multitask, which is interesting, but I'm actually intentional. Like, I don't like running, but I know it's really good for my body, so I will listen to a podcast. I'm getting all the exercise from running, but I'm distracting myself from the mental part of it. There's also a great tool I use called Scenebox for email that sort of filters out a lot of the email that you don't need to read in a day, and kind of keeps your peripheral vision clearer.
I always wish someone had created a podcast where it's like inspirational, information, but at the same time, it's got a really strong kind of banging kind of soundtrack to it as well. So you get the music piece.
You can like rock to it. So
yeah, exactly.
But if I get engrossed in a good podcast, I mean, I can jog 4 or 5 miles and then I'm psyched. Because again, I really like the impact that jogging or running has on me. I really, as someone who struggles with attention and whatever, like it bores me. So I do need to figure out a way to do that.
And then actually, we're just talking about music. If you were to recommend one piece of music or one album to our listeners, what would that be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I'm partial to Joshua Tree, Octung Baby. Those are good. I mean, those are sort of front to back albums.
And if you've obviously got your own book out, and we're going to have links to that here as well. But if you were to recommend one book by another author, it could be on some of the topics we've been covering today, or something you just feel that more people should read this book, what would the book be?
It's a great book that I always like to recommend called Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me. And it's sort of a definitive book on cognitive dissonance. And I think cognitive dissonance is one of the most impactful and destructive forces in our life, both within ourselves and other people. And reading that book just really illuminated it to me, and how to spot it and see it and the effect of it. And it's a great read. And basically, we make we repeat a lot of mistakes because we're trying to protect ourselves from ourselves. So I strongly, when you really study or learn or get into cognitive dissonance, you will see it everywhere in all of the advice and recommendations and stuff that people are giving you on a daily basis.
Great. And we'll put all these links here so people are going to go and check those out as well. And Robert, I'd like you to imagine you woke up tomorrow morning, whether it's in Massachusetts or wherever you want to wake up, and you have to start from scratch. So you have to start again. No one knows you, you know no one, but thankfully you've got all the skills you've acquired over the years. What would you do? How would you restart things?
Do I still know the people that I know?
No contacts.
No contacts. I'd probably start writing. So I think that's what I've learned over the years, is that if you have an opinion, I'd start writing, connecting with the people, because I think that's built a community and a tribe around the people who share similar ideas. I would also take the things that I know I'm really good at and that I enjoy, and I would try to get involved and apply myself to those as soon as possible. But that's a good question. I haven't been asked that one.
So talking about connecting, where's the best place for people to go and connect with you? And also to learn more about the book?
Sure, yeah. Everything is now in one place, and that's Robert Glazer, GLAZER.com. So on there, you can sign up for the Friday Forward email. You can check out my podcast. You can learn more about the book. It's all in one place.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for coming on today. I wish you all the best with the new book, and thank you so much for coming and sharing about your creative life. If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.